I knew my sister was going to steal my life the moment she walked in wearing my dress. The silver gown, the one I'd sewn by hand over 3 months, stitching moonflower petals into the bodice, hung on Cassie like it had been made for her body instead of mine. Which, in a way, I suppose all beautiful things had. We were twins, but you'd never know at first glance. Cassie had inherited our mother's beauty. High cheekbones, full lips, eyes the color of amber in sunlight. I'd gotten our father's features, softer, plainer, forgettable. Our mother died bringing us into the world. My father never let me forget which twin had cost more to deliver. "Don't," I said, my voice barely a whisper. I was sitting on my bed, half dressed in my slip, my hair still damp from the ritual bath. The Luna selections started in an hour. 1 hour until I'd stand before Alpha King Davos, with every other unmated female in the territory, hoping desperately for something I couldn't even name. "Cass, please, that's mine." She turned to the mirror, smoothing her hands down the bodice. The moonflower petals shimmered silver white, each one a tiny prayer I'd stitched into the fabric. I'd embroidered them with thread I couldn't afford, thread I'd traded my grandmother's ring to buy. Each petal had taken hours. I'd pricked my fingers so many times the fabric had faint rust-colored stains I'd had to scrub out with salt water. "It looks better on me," Cassie said. Not cruelly, just factually, the way she said most things. She met my eyes in the reflection. "You know it does." I did know. That was the worst part. "Father said I'm going in your place," she continued. "He's already updated the registry with the selection officials. Your name was submitted, but I'll be the one who shows up. Nobody will question it." My chest tightened. "Why?" She turned to face me directly now, and there was something almost pitying in her expression. "You know I'm prettier than you, Willa. More confident. I know how to work a room, how to make men look at me the way they'll never look at you." She said it matter-of-factly, the way you'd comment on the weather. "And beyond that, you're weak. You flinch when people raise their voices. You apologize for existing, and you're—" She paused, and I knew what word was coming before she said it. "You're wolfless. If by some miracle the Alpha King chose you, you'd shame our entire family within a week." The words landed like physical blows, because she was right about the first part. She was more beautiful, more magnetic. I'd spent my whole life watching people's eyes slide past me to land on her, but it was the last word that cut deepest. Wolfless. The thing that had defined my life for over a decade. I'd had a wolf once. I remembered her. A presence in my mind, warm and protective. A voice that wasn't quite mine, but felt like home. But one night, when I was 12, I saw something that made my wolf retreat so far inward. She disappeared entirely. The pack, healer called it trauma-induced dormancy. She said my wolf might wake again if I felt safe, if I found the right trigger. My father insisted it was proof I was defective, broken, a waste of resources. "Father's right," Cassie continued, gentler now. "Our family needs this alliance. Our pack needs a strong Luna. I can do it better than you." Before we continue, if you're rooting for me to prove them all wrong, please subscribe. It means the world. Now back to our story. I wanted to stand up and rip the dress off her body and scream that she had no right, that I'd bled for those moonflowers, that I'd submitted my own name for my own reasons that had nothing to do with family politics or pack alliances. But my throat closed around the words the way it always did, and I sat there on my bed in my underclothes, watching my twin sister steal the one chance I'd had to be something more than the forgettable daughter, the broken one, the girl who existed in everyone's shadow. Cassie left without another word, taking my dress, my name, and my future with her. I should have stayed home. But the traveling healer's words from 3 weeks ago wouldn't stop echoing in my mind. "Your wolf isn't gone," she'd said, her gnarled fingers pressed against my chest, right over my heart. "She's sleeping, waiting. You'll know when she stirs. It'll feel like something waking up inside you, like remembering how to breathe. What would wake her? I'd asked, desperate but trying not to show it. The healer had smiled, sad and knowing. Truth usually does. Or love. Sometimes they're the same thing. She'd pressed a small pouch of herbs into my hand. Go to the selection, child. Even if you don't think you belong. Sometimes we have to stand in the right place before we understand why we're there. So I'd submitted my name. Not because I thought I'd be chosen, but because for the first time in 14 years, I felt something stir. Just a flutter, like a bird's wing against the inside of my ribs. Hope, maybe. Or desperation wearing hope's clothes. I dressed in my second best dress, plain gray linen mended at the seams, and braided my damp hair with shaking fingers. The palace was only 3 miles away. I could walk it. I had to walk it, actually, because my father had taken the carriage for Cassie. The selection grounds were already crowded when I arrived. Hundreds of unmated females from across the territory, all dressed in their finest, all groomed and perfumed, and radiating the kind of confidence that came from having a wolf, having a place, having a father who didn't look at you like you were a mistake that cost him his wife. I recognized some of them. Daughters of wealthy families, trained since childhood for this exact moment. Warriors who could shift mid-combat. Healers whose wolves gave them gifts of sight or prophecy. Every single one of them was whole in a way I would never be. I slipped in through a servant's entrance, staying low behind the hedge line. No one stopped me. No one even looked at me. I'd gotten good at being invisible. From my position in the far back, partially hidden behind a stone pillar, I could see everything. The gardens were designed as an amphitheater, with the candidates arranged in concentric circles. The most desirable candidates, daughters of allied packs, proven warriors, wolves with rare gifts, were positioned in the inner circle. The rest arranged themselves outward by rank and status until you reached the outermost edge, where the desperate and the damaged waited in the shadows. Like me. I watched the inner circle of beautiful, powerful women, all standing with perfect posture and practiced smiles, the middle circles of hopefuls, ambitious and eager, and there, in the second inner ring, positioned like she belonged there. Cassie. My dress caught the afternoon light exactly the way I'd imagined it would. The moonflowers seemed to glow against the silver fabric. She stood with the confidence of someone who'd never been told she was wrong or broken. Someone who'd never had to question whether she deserved to take up space. A horn sounded, clear and commanding. The crowd fell silent. Alpha King Davos entered from the palace doors, and I understood immediately why every unmated female in the territory had hoped to be chosen. He moved like violence contained in human form, not threatening exactly, but undeniably dangerous. Tall and broad-shouldered, dark hair that curled slightly at his collar, a face that was all sharp angles and harder edges. But it was his eyes that caught me. Even from this distance, I could see they were an unusual dark gray. He was alone. No advisors flanked him, no guards. Just one man walking through a garden full of hundreds of women who wanted to possess him, yet he looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. The elderly woman who served as selection mistress stepped forward, beginning the traditional speech about pack bonds and sacred duty and the honor of serving as Luna. I'd heard it before. Every girl in the territory grew up memorizing the words, just in case. But I wasn't listening. I was watching Davos's face, watching the way his jaw tightened with each honeyed word, watching the way his eyes moved across the assembled candidates with something that looked almost like disappointment. He'd been Alpha King for 8 years. I knew the stories. Everyone did. He'd taken the throne at 25 when his father fell in battle defending the northern border. By all accounts, he was brilliant, but isolated. He'd rejected every Luna candidate for nearly a decade, until his council finally pressured him into this selection. There was no shortage of salacious rumors as to why he'd remained unmated for so long. But watching him now, I thought maybe the truth was simple. He was tired. Tired of performance, politics, people who wanted his crown more than they wanted him. The selection mistress finished her speech. The actual ceremony was as straightforward. Davos would walk the circles, and if he felt drawn to any particular candidate, he would stop and speak with them. The bond would either spark or it wouldn't. If no bond formed, he could still choose a political match, but everyone knew those matches rarely held. He started in the inner circle, moving past the daughters of powerful families with barely a glance. I watched several women step forward hopefully, only to be passed by without acknowledgement. His expression remained carefully neutral, giving nothing away. But something was wrong. I could see it in the tension in his shoulders, in the way his hands kept clenching and unclenching at his sides. He looked like a man walking through a nightmare pretending it was a dream. He stopped in front of a warrior woman I recognized, Sarah Blackwood, renowned for her combat skills and strategic mind. They spoke briefly. She smiled. He nodded. Then moved on, leaving her standing there with confusion written across her face. 3 more stops. 3 more brief conversations. 3 more dismissals. And then he reached the second inner ring. Reached Cassie. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't move. Could only watch as my sister, wearing my dress, using my name, stepped forward with a smile I'd seen her practice in the mirror 1,000 times. Confident, sultry, calculated to appeal. Davos stopped. His whole body went rigid, like he'd been struck. For a moment I thought, hoped, that the bond had sparked, that maybe fate had decided Cassie deserved this after all, and I could finally stop feeling like I'd been robbed. But his expression wasn't recognition. It was revulsion. No, not revulsion. Confusion. He was staring at Cassie like she was speaking a language he almost understood but couldn't quite translate. His jaw worked like he was fighting not to speak, and I saw his hands clench into fists so tight his knuckles went white. Your name? His voice carried across the suddenly silent garden. Willa Thorne, Your Majesty. Cassie's voice was honey-sweet, pitched to charm as she assumed my identity. Something flickered across Davos's face. He stepped closer to her, and I saw Cassie's smile widen, thinking she'd won. Tell me about yourself, Willa Thorne. I'm the eldest daughter of Lord Gavin Thorne, Cassie said smoothly. I've trained in pact diplomacy and household management since childhood. My wolf is strong, and I've been told I have a gift for strategy. Stop. The word was quiet, but absolute. Cassie's smile faltered. Davos's eyes narrowed. When did you lose your mother? It was a strange question, but Cassie recovered quickly. In childbirth, Your Majesty. She died, bringing my sister and me into the world. And what did you inherit from her? Her beauty, I'm told, and her diplomatic skills. Davos's expression was unreadable. He stared at Cassie for a long moment, and I could see her confidence starting to crack under the weight of that gaze. Then he looked away. Not gradually, not with ceremony, just turned his head like he'd lost interest entirely. Then his eyes found mine. I froze. I was half hidden behind the pillar, practically invisible in the shadows of the outer gardens, but somehow his gaze landed on me with the precision of an arrow finding its target. For 3 seconds that felt like 3 hours, we stared at each other across the garden full of perfect candidates. His eyes went wide and something in his expression cracked open. The exhaustion in his face lifted. The tension in his shoulders eased, and for just a moment, he looked like a man who'd been holding his breath for years and suddenly remembered how to exhale. Inside my chest, something moved. A flutter like a sleeping thing disturbed by light. Then Cassie recaptured his attention, and my moment shattered. Davos looked back at my sister. Something shuddered in his face, going cold and distant again. He nodded once, curtly, and I thought he was going to move on, leave Cassie standing there with all the others he'd passed by. Instead, he said, "You'll do." The garden erupted in gasps and whispers. Cassie's face lit up with triumph. The selection mistress stepped forward, already beginning the formal announcement. But Davos's jaw was still tight, his hands still clenched. He looked like a man who'd just made a decision he'd regret for the rest of his life. "We'll begin the week-long bonding trial," Davos said, his voice carrying across the crowd. "As per tradition, if the bond proves true, we'll finalize the Luna ceremony next Sabbath." More gasps. Bonding trials were traditional, but rarely used anymore. Most selections ended with an immediate claiming, if the alpha felt any pull at all. The fact that Davos was invoking the trial period suggested doubt. But he was still choosing her. Still choosing the woman wearing my name and my dress. But I couldn't even be angry because what had I expected? I was nobody. Wolfless, broken, and invisible. I turned to leave, to slip away before anyone noticed me, before I had to watch Cassie take the final thing that might have been mine. But as I moved, I felt it again, that flutter in my chest, stronger this time. Insistent. And with it came a feeling I hadn't experienced in 14 years. My wolf's voice, distant and weak but unmistakably present. "Wrong. He chose wrong. That's not..." The voice faded before finishing, sinking back into wherever she'd been hiding. But the message was clear. I pressed my hand against my chest, feeling my heart hammering beneath my palm. My wolf had spoken. I looked back at the garden one more time. Davos was being led away by officials, Cassie, walking beside him wearing my dress like a victory banner. But just before he disappeared through the palace doors, he glanced back over his shoulder. His eyes found mine again, unerring. And the confusion in his expression was replaced by something that looked almost like grief. Then he was gone, and I was alone in the gardens, with the other rejected candidates, all of us invisible in our own ways. I walked home in the fading light, with the healer's words echoing in my mind. Sometimes we have to stand in the right place before we understand why we're there. Our house was empty when I arrived. Of course it was. My father had moved the entire household to temporary quarters near the palace for the bonding trial week. He'd want to be close to Cassie, close to the political opportunities her potential lunaship offered. He hadn't bothered to tell me, hadn't left a note or instructions or any indication of where they'd gone. I stood in the empty kitchen, staring at the cold hearth, and felt something crack open inside me. Some part of me that had been carefully folded away for self-preservation. I'd spent 26 years making myself smaller, quieter, less. And for what? So my father would love me? So my sister would stop taking from me? They never would. Not in this house. Not in this pack. I spent 3 days alone. No food in the house. They'd taken everything. No word from my father or sister. Nothing but silence and the slowly growing certainty that I couldn't let this stand. The traveling healer had said truth would wake my wolf. Or love. Maybe it was time to stop accepting lies. Stop accepting being erased. On the 4th day, I walked to the palace. It took 2 hours because I was weak from not eating, because my legs trembled with every step. Every part of me kept screaming to turn back, to accept my place, to stop making trouble. But my wolf also stirred with each step. Not speaking, not emerging, but present. Awake, pushing me forward. The palace was massive up close. All white stone and silver banners, towers reaching toward the sky like accusations. Guards flanked every entrance, their expressions bored but alert. I approached the main gate, tried to steady my voice. "I need to speak with the Alpha King." The guard didn't even look at me. Petitioners submit written requests. They're reviewed monthly. I can't wait a month. This is urgent. Everyone thinks their issue is urgent. Now he looked at me, taking in my dusty dress, my tangled hair, my obvious lack of status. Move along. Please, it's about the Luna selection. The selection is concluded. The bonding trial is in progress. Move along, or I'll have you removed. Desperation made me stupid. I stepped closer, raised my voice. The woman he chose isn't who she says she is. Her name isn't Willa Thorne. I'm Willa Thorne, and she stole my... The guard's hand went to his weapon. That's quite an accusation. You have proof? I submitted my registration, my portrait, the dress she wore. I made it myself. If you'd just let me speak with someone who could verify. Guards, he called over his shoulder. We've got a disturbed citizen making false claims about the Luna candidate. 2 more guards appeared. One grabbed my arm, not gently. I tried to pull away, tried to explain, but they were already dragging me backward. Please, just let me talk to him. He'll know. When he sees me, he'll know something's wrong. Please. My voice was getting louder, more frantic. People were stopping to stare. Palace officials, servants, nobles going about their business, all turning to watch the spectacle of a wolfless nobody being removed from the premises. Stop this! A new voice, cold with authority. The guards froze. I looked up to find a woman descending the palace steps, tall, elegant, with silver threading through her dark hair. She wore the formal robes of a high-ranking official. Lady Nessa, one of the guards said, bowing slightly. This citizen is making disturbing claims about... I heard the claims, Lady Nessa's sharp eyes fixed on me. You say you're Willa Thorne, and you're claiming the woman currently in the bonding trial with our Alpha King is an imposter? Put like that, it sounded insane, like I was jealous, delusional, an attention seeker. But I'd come too far to back down now. She's my twin sister. She took my place at the selection. She's using my name. Lady Nessa studied me for a long moment. Twin sister, how convenient. And I suppose you can prove this? I can answer questions that only the real Willa Thorne would know. Questions from my registration application, my written submission, anything. Or, Lady Nessa said coolly, you researched the real Willa Thorne thoroughly and are attempting fraud to gain access to the palace and the Alpha King. My heart sank. Of course. Why would they believe me? Cassie was already inside, playing the part perfectly. I can prove it, I said desperately. Just ask him. Ask the Alpha King. When he sees me, the Alpha King is occupied with his potential Luna. He doesn't have time to entertain every jealous... What's going on here? The voice that cut through the courtyard made every person present go still. Alpha King Davos stood at the top of the palace steps, his expression thunderous. He must have heard the commotion from inside. His beautiful gray eyes swept across the scene. The guards restraining me, Lady Nessa's stern face, the gathering crowd of onlookers. Then his gaze landed on me. I watched the color drain from his face, watched his whole body go rigid like he'd been struck by lightning. His hands clenched at his sides, and his jaw worked like he was fighting for control. You! The word came out strangled. He descended the steps 3 at a time, moving with that predatory grace that made everyone scramble out of his way. He stopped directly in front of me, close enough that I could see his chest rising and falling with rapid breaths, could see the confusion and recognition warring in his expression. You're not her, he said, and it wasn't a question. It was a growl, low and dangerous. The woman inside. That's not... He reached out like he was going to touch my face, then stopped himself, hand hovering in the air between us. Who are you? Willa Thorne. My voice shook. The real one. My sister Cassie. She took my place at the selection. She's been pretending to be me. Something settled across his face. Not surprise, but certainty. Like I'd just confirmed something he'd already known but couldn't articulate. I knew, he said almost to himself. I knew something was wrong. Every word out of her mouth felt like... He cut himself off, shaking his head. His eyes bore into mine. Why didn't you come forward sooner? I tried. The guards wouldn't let me in. Your Majesty, Lady Nessa stepped forward carefully. We should verify these claims before... I don't need verification. Davos's voice was hard as stone. I know. The relief that flooded through me was so intense I swayed on my feet. Davos caught my arm, steadying me, and the moment his skin touched mine, my wolf surged, present in a way she hadn't been in 14 years. Awake, alert, and singing with recognition. I gasped. Davos's eyes widened, and I knew he felt it too. Get Lord Gavin Thorne, Davos ordered, not taking his eyes off me. And bring the woman calling herself Willa to the throne room. Now. The guards scattered to obey. Lady Nessa hesitated, then bowed and retreated. The crowd of onlookers was growing, whispers spreading like wildfire. Can you stand? Davos asked quietly. I think so. When did you last eat? The question surprised me. 3 days ago, maybe 4. His jaw clenched. He turned to a nearby servant. Bring food and water to the throne room. Immediately. Then he offered me his arm. A courtesy. A choice. I took it, feeling the solid warmth of him through his sleeve, and let him guide me into the palace. The throne room was exactly as imposing as I'd imagined. High vaulted ceilings, walls lined with ancestral portraits, a throne of carved obsidian at the far end. Davos led me not to the commoner's position in the center of the room, but to a cushioned chair near the throne itself. Sit, he said. Not an order. A request. I sat. My legs were shaking now. A servant appeared with bread, cheese, dried fruit, and a pitcher of water. I hadn't realized how hungry I was until the smell hit me. I forced myself to eat slowly, not wanting to be sick. Davos stood nearby, not quite hovering, but close enough that I could feel his presence like a warm weight. He didn't speak, just waited with the patience of someone who'd learned to read silence. The throne room doors opened. My father entered first, his face already lit with rage. Behind him came Cassie, still wearing my dress, her expression cycling rapidly from confident to confused to fearful as she took in the scene. And behind them, Lady Nessa and 2 guards. Lord Gavin, Davos said, his voice carrying effortlessly through the massive space. Please explain to me how you managed to enter a false candidate into the Luna selection. My father's face went from red to pale in an instant. Your Majesty, I don't know what you've been told, but... I've been told, Davos interrupted, that the woman currently residing in the Luna quarters is not Willa Thorne, but her twin sister Cassie. Is this true? My father's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Is it true? Davos's voice dropped into something dangerous. They're twins, my father said finally. Fraternal twins. And yes, Cassie attended the selection in Willa's place, but, Your Majesty, you must understand Willa is wolfless. My father said it like an accusation. She's been broken since childhood. She would have been a poor representation of our family, of our pack. Cassie is strong, capable, everything a Luna should be. So, you committed fraud. Davos's words were glacial. You submitted another in her place, banking on the fact that they're twins, and no one would question it. I was protecting our pack's interests. You were protecting your own ambitions. Davos descended from the throne, and even my father, who was not a small man, seemed to shrink. Tell me, Lord Gavin, did your daughter Willa consent to this substitution? My father's eyes flickered to me, then away. She understood the necessity. Did she consent? She's wolfless. She has no rights to... Answer the question. The silence stretched. Finally, my father said, No, she didn't consent. Cassie made a small sound of distress. I couldn't look at her. Couldn't bear to see whether it was guilt or just fear of consequences. "Cassie Thorne," Davos said, turning to my sister. "Did you know you were committing fraud?" Cassie's voice came out small. "Father said it was for the good of the family." "That's not what I asked. Did you know you were taking your sister's place without her permission?" A long pause. Then, barely audible, "Yes." Davos nodded slowly. "At least you're honest about that much." He turned back to my father. "Lord Gavin Thorne, you are hereby stripped of your minor lordship and all associated titles. Your lands revert to crown management. You and your daughter Cassie are banished from court and from participating in any future pack governance. You have until sundown to leave the capital." My father's face went white. "You can't. The pack will accept my judgment or challenge me directly." Davos's voice was absolutely calm. "Would you like to challenge me, Lord Gavin?" My father deflated. Banishment meant social death. Loss of title meant financial ruin. Everything he'd worked for, gone in a moment. "What becomes of Willa?" My father's voice was bitter. "That," Davos said, "is between Willa and myself. You're dismissed." Guards appeared to escort them out. Cassie went quietly, her head down, but my father turned back one last time, his eyes finding mine. "This is what comes of your selfishness," he said, and his voice was full of venom. "You've destroyed this family. Your mother would be ashamed." The words hit exactly where he'd aimed them. My old wound, never healed. "Get him out," Davos said quietly, and the guards moved. Then we were alone, Davos and me, and the weight of what had just happened. I couldn't speak, couldn't process. My father was banished. Cassie was banished. Everything I'd known, the entire structure of my life, had just collapsed. "Breathe," Davos said. He was beside me suddenly, kneeling so we were at eye level. "Just breathe." "I've destroyed them," I whispered. "They destroyed themselves." His voice was firm. "They committed fraud. They stole your choice. Whatever consequences they face, they earned." Your mother isn't here to be ashamed. Or proud." Davos's hand came up to cup my face, and the touch was so gentle I could have cried. But if she were, I think she'd be proud that her daughter finally stood up for herself. I did cry then. Silently, tears streaming down my face while Davos stayed kneeling in front of me, his thumb brushing my cheek. When I could finally speak, I asked the question that's been burning on my mind. "Did you know? When you saw Cassie at the selection?" "I have a woofed," Davos said quietly. "I can sense deception. When people lie, when they perform, when they're being anything other than genuine. I feel it. Like a vibration in my chest that won't stop until the lie does." He paused. "Your sister was a lie from the moment she opened her mouth." "Then why did you choose her?" I didn't know what I was sensing. Just that something was off. Every word she said felt, he paused, searching. Rehearsed. But she looked the part, talked the part, and I've been pressured for years to just choose someone. He looked away. I thought maybe I was losing it, that the problem was me. "You saw me in the gardens," I said quietly. "Yes." He turned back to face me, and for the first time in 8 years, my gift went completely quiet. With you, there's no warning signal, no static, just... He stopped, like he couldn't quite name it. "I knew something was different with you, but I didn't understand what until I saw you both in the same room." His hand was still against my face. "She was playing a part. You weren't." Something in my chest cracked open. This man, this powerful alpha king, was offering me something I'd never had. Belief. Not just in my story, but in my worth. I'm wolfless, I said, because he needed to know, needed to understand what he was defending. I've been broken since I was 12, and I can't promise I'll ever be whole. What happened when you were 12? The question was gentle, giving me space to refuse. But something in his eyes made me want to answer, made me feel, impossibly, like the truth might be safe with him. I watched my father hurt someone. The words came slowly, painfully. A servant who'd broken a dish. My father dragged him into the courtyard and shifted, and he didn't just punish him. He destroyed him, broke bones, tore flesh. And the man couldn't fight back, couldn't defend himself, just screamed until he couldn't scream anymore. Davos's expression darkened. My wolf was young, I continued. She didn't understand violence like that, so she retreated. Went so deep inside me I couldn't feel her anymore. I met his eyes. The healers say she might wake if I feel safe enough, but I've never felt safe. Not in 14 years. And now? Davos asked quietly. I considered that. Considered the way my wolf had stirred when our eyes met in the garden. The way she'd surged when he touched my arm. The way she was present now, not speaking but awake, attentive. Now she's waking, I admitted. Because of you. Something fierce and tender crossed his expression. Then we'll keep waking her, however long it takes. You don't really know me. I know you're genuine. I know my gift goes quiet around you, which means you're the only person in this entire kingdom I can trust as being honest with me. I know you walked into the palace alone, with no allies, no power, no status, and demanded to be heard anyway. I know you've survived 14 years of silence and cruelty, and you're still here, still fighting. He paused. You're worth knowing. My throat tightened. The court will hate me. I'm wolfless. I have no training, no political value. Your council will say you're making a mistake. The court's opinion isn't what matters here. And my council can take their concerns and... He stopped himself, something almost like humor flickering across his face. What are you saying? I'm saying you were the one registered for the selection. Your name, your application, your choice to participate. The bond trial should have been with you, not your sister. He held my gaze. I'm offering you what was stolen from you. The chance to see if this, he gestured between us, could be something real. My heart was hammering. You're offering me the bonding trial? I'm offering you a choice. Stay here as my guest, under my protection, and we'll spend the next week getting to know each other. If at the end you want to leave, you're free to go. If you want to stay, but not as Luna, we'll figure that out. And if you want... He paused, something vulnerable crossing his face. If you want to see where this leads, then we'll take it one step at a time. It was everything I'd hoped for, and nothing I'd expected. Not a claiming, not a demand, but a genuine choice. You could have anyone, I whispered. Someone whole, someone strong. You are strong. His thumb brushed my cheek again. Inside my chest, my wolf stirred. Okay, I heard myself say. Yes, I want to try. Relief flooded his expression. Good. Then let's start with getting you proper food, quarters, and rest. Everything else can wait. He stood, offering his hand. I took it, feeling the calluses on his palm, the strength in his grip. As he helped me to my feet, my wolf moved again, that flutter of awakening, of recognition. And I realized that for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid. The chambers Davos arranged for me were in the East Wing, a suite of rooms that would have fit my entire childhood, home inside twice over. Soft carpets, curtains the color of cream, a bed so large and comfortable I wanted to weep. But it was the window that undid me. Floor-to-ceiling glass overlooking gardens that stretched toward the forest, and in the distance, mountains touched the sky like they were trying to reach the moon. Is this acceptable? Davos asked from the doorway. He hadn't entered, I noticed, keeping proper distance, respecting boundaries. It's perfect. Someone will bring your things. He stopped. Ah, I suppose you don't have things to bring. Because Cassie had taken everything. My clothes, my few possessions, even the small box of my mother's letters I'd hidden under my bed. It's fine, I said quickly. I don't need much. Nevertheless, Davos gestured and a servant appeared. Make sure Lady Willa has everything she requires, clothes, toiletries, whatever she needs, and have the kitchen send up a full meal. That's not necessary. You haven't eaten properly in days. His voice was firm. Let me take care of this. The servant bowed and disappeared. Davos lingered in the doorway, and I could see him struggling with something. Finally, he said, I want you to understand. You're safe here. My quarters are in the West Wing, far enough away that you have complete privacy. If you need anything, ring the bell by the door, and someone will come. If you want to explore the palace, you're free to do so. If you want to stay in here and rest for a week, that's fine too. What about the bonding trial? Happens however you want it to happen. He paused. Whatever helps you feel safe. Something in my chest eased. You're very not what I expected. What did you expect? I don't know. Someone colder, maybe. More commanding. His mouth curved. I can be commanding when necessary. But you've had enough people commanding you. I thought maybe choice would be a nice change. After he left, I sat on the bed and tried to process everything that had happened in the span of a few hours. It felt like a dream, or a trap. My wolf stirred again, and this time I felt her clearly enough to sense emotion, anticipation, hope. He's safe, she seemed to be saying. We're safe. Are we? I whispered to the empty room. But I already knew the answer. My wolf was waking, and she was waking because of him. The next morning I woke to sunlight streaming through the massive windows and the smell of fresh bread. Someone had left a tray outside my door. Warm pastries, fruit, tea that smelled like honey and herbs. And a note in strong, angular handwriting. If you're awake and willing, meet me in the Eastern Gardens at midday. If not, tomorrow is fine. Or the day after. No pressure. Davos. I ate slowly, savoring each bite. Then I explored the wardrobe someone had filled overnight. Simple dresses, nothing ostentatious, but well-made and in colors that suited me. I chose a dress the color of sage and braided my hair simply. No moonflowers this time. No desperate prayers to be noticed. Just me. The gardens were easy to find. I just followed the scent of growing things until I emerged into manicured paths and flowering hedges. Davos was already there, standing by a fountain, dressed in simple training clothes instead of formal robes. He looked up when I approached, and something in his expression eased. You came. You asked. I suggested. There's a difference. He gestured to a bench. Walk or sit? Walk, I decided. I've been sitting for too long. We walked in silence for a bit, following a path that wound through rose bushes and beneath trellises heavy with climbing jasmine. It was peaceful in a way I'd never experienced, not the tense quiet of walking on eggshells, but the comfortable quiet of two people who didn't need to fill every moment with words. Finally, Davos said, Tell me something true. What? Something true about you. Anything. I want to know you, but I don't want to interrogate you like a council meeting. So just tell me something true. I thought about that. I love books, old ones especially. There's a bookshop in the lower city that lets me sit and read for hours, even though I can't afford to buy anything. The owner, Master Callum, he's kind. He never makes me feel like I'm taking up space I haven't paid for. Davos nodded slowly. What do you read? Everything. History, mostly. Old pack chronicles, stories about how things used to be before the territories divided. I paused. I like knowing there was a time when we were united, when we weren't all suspicious of each other. You're a romantic. I'm a realist who wishes things were different. There's a distinction. His mouth pulled into a smile. Fair. My turn? Your turn. I hate being Alpha King about 60% of the time. He said it matter-of-factly. The politics, the posturing, the constant awareness that everyone wants something from me. I took the crown because my father died and someone had to, but I never wanted it. What did you want? To be a scholar, actually. Study pack history, archive old documents, maybe teach at one of the universities. He laughed, bitter and surprised. I've never told anyone that. Why not? Because Alpha Kings don't get to want things like that. We're supposed to want power and conquest and glory. He looked at me. But you asked for truth, so that's my truth. We walked further, trading truths like currency. Small things, inconsequential things, but each one felt like a gift. I learned he hated formal dinners, but loved training at dawn. That he played chess badly, but refused to stop trying. That he missed his mother, who'd died when he was young, and had complicated feelings about his father, who'd been a good king, but a distant parent. He learned I could draw, but never showed anyone. That I'd taught myself basic healing because my father refused to pay for my training. That I had a recurring dream about flying, which was strange because wolves didn't fly. But in the dream, I had wings made of silver feathers. That's beautiful, Davos said quietly. It's just a dream. The day passed like that, walking, talking, existing together. When the sun started to set, Davos walked me back to the palace entrance. Tomorrow? He asked. Tomorrow, I agreed. As I turned to go, he caught my hand. Willa, thank you. For being genuine. For letting me see you. He squeezed my hand once, gently, then let go. It means more than you know. The week unfolded in a rhythm I'd never experienced before. Davos and I would meet in the mornings, sometimes in the gardens, sometimes in the palace library he showed me on the third day, sometimes just walking the grounds while he told me stories about growing up here. He never pressured, just offered himself, piece by piece, and waited to see if I'd offer pieces back. I did. Slowly at first, then with growing confidence. I told him about my mother, about the hole her absence had left, about growing up with a father who blamed me for her death, about watching Cassie receive everything, love, training, attention, while I learned to be invisible, just to avoid punishment. He was wrong, Davos said fiercely when I finished. We were in the library, sitting in adjacent chairs while rain pattered against the windows. Your father was wrong about all of it. You're not broken. You're not a burden. And you didn't kill your mother. Childbirth did. That's not the same thing. Logically, I know that. But knowing and believing are different things. He was quiet for a moment. My father used to say I was too soft, too sentimental. Said it would make me a weak king. He stared at the rain. I spent years trying to be harder, colder, more like what he expected. It made me miserable. What changed? He died, and I realized I could be the kind of king I wanted to be, not the kind he demanded. Davos looked at me. You get to do that too, you know. Decide who you want to be, instead of who your father said you were. The words settled into me like seeds in soil. On the 5th day, I woke to find my wolf more present than she'd been since childhood. Not speaking yet, but there. A warmth in my chest, a presence in my mind. I could almost feel her breathing in sync with my own. I found Davos in the training yard, sparring with a guard. He moved beautifully, all controlled power and precise strikes. When he noticed me watching, he ended the session and walked over, slightly out of breath. "Morning," he said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Morning. I felt something." His eyes sharpened. "Your wolf?" "She's getting stronger. I can feel her more clearly." I pressed my hand to my chest. "It's like she's swimming up from somewhere deep, getting closer to the surface." Something fierce and proud crossed his face. "That's good. That's really good, Willa." "It's because of you. Because I feel—" I stopped, not sure how to articulate it. "Safe?" he offered quietly. "Yes, safe." I met his eyes. I've never felt that before. And even then, it wasn't real safety. Just childhood ignorance. Davos stepped closer. "Can I ask you something?" "Always." "The bonding trial ends tomorrow. The council will expect an answer about whether we're proceeding with the Luna ceremony." He held my gaze. "I need to know what you want, not what you think I want, or what would be politically convenient. What do you want?" My heart was hammering. I don't know if I can be Luna. I'm still wolfless, or mostly wolfless. I have no training in pack politics or diplomacy. The court already thinks you're making a mistake with me. "I didn't ask if you could be Luna. I asked what you want." "I want—" The words caught. "I want this. You. These conversations. The way you look at me like I matter. The way my wolf wakes up when you're near." I took a shaking breath. "But I'm terrified. Because what if I'm not enough? What if you realize I can't do what needs to be done? What if—" He kissed me then. Not aggressive or demanding. Just soft and sure and tasting like truth. His hands cupped my face like I was something precious, and my wolf surged forward with a joy. I felt all the way to my bones. When he pulled back, his eyes were bright. "You felt that?" "Yes." My voice came out breathless. "Your wolf responded?" "She did." "Then she knows what I know. You're more than enough. You're exactly what I've been looking for." His thumbs brushed my cheeks. "I don't need a perfect Luna. I need a genuine partner. Someone I can trust. Someone who sees me and lets me see them. The court will adjust, or they won't. Either way, it's not their choice." He rested his forehead against mine. "Stay, not because you think you should, but because you want to, and we'll figure out the rest together." My wolf was singing now, fully awake for the first time in 14 years, present and joyful and absolutely certain. "Okay," I whispered. "Yay, I'll stay." The council meeting was exactly as bad as I'd expected. Davos had insisted I be present as his chosen partner. We sat at the long table together, facing 12 council members whose expressions ranged from skeptical to openly hostile. "Your Majesty," Elder Bowen began, his voice carefully neutral. "We've reviewed the unusual circumstances of this bonding trial. While we appreciate that fraud was committed by the Thorne family, we must address the practical concerns about your final selection." "Which are?" Davos's tone was polite but edged. "Lady Willa is wolfless. This is not a minor concern. It's a fundamental issue that affects pack stability, succession, and your own legitimacy as Alpha King." Bowen folded his hands. "A Luna must be able to shift, to fight, to lead alongside you. How can she fulfill these duties without a wolf?" "My wolf is waking," I said before Davos could respond. "She's been dormant, not gone. And she's returning." "Dormant for 14 years, another council member, Lady Soren, interjected. "Even if she does fully wake, which is far from guaranteed, you'll be years behind in training, decades behind in combat skills. You'll be vulnerable, which makes the Alpha King vulnerable. "I don't need Willa to fight my battles," Davos said coldly. "I need a partner who I can trust. That's worth more than combat prowess." "With respect, Your Majesty, your feelings are not the only consideration." Bowen's expression was sympathetic but firm. "The pack needs to respect their Luna. They need to feel confident in her ability to lead if something happens to you. A wolfless Luna, or even a barely trained one, will be seen as weak. It will undermine everything you've built." The words landed like physical blows. Because they were right, weren't they? I was weak, untrained, a liability. My wolf stirred, and I felt her disagreement, fierce and absolute. But she couldn't speak, couldn't defend us, couldn't prove we were more than the council feared. "What exactly are you suggesting?" Davos's voice had gone dangerously quiet. "A longer trial period," Bowen said. 6 months, perhaps a year. Time for Lady Willa to fully recover her wolf, undergo proper training, prove she can handle the responsibilities. If, after that time, she's shown sufficient progress, we can revisit the Luna ceremony. "And if I refuse?" Silence. The council members exchanged glances. Finally, Lady Soren said, "Then we will question your judgment, formally, before the entire pack." It was a threat, veiled but unmistakable. If Davos pushed forward with me as Luna despite their concerns, they'd challenge his fitness to rule. I felt sick. This was exactly what I'd feared, that my presence would hurt him, would undermine his authority, would prove that choosing me had been a mistake. "I need to speak with Willa," Davos said abruptly. "Alone. We'll resume this meeting tomorrow." He stood, not waiting for permission, and held out his hand to me. I took it, feeling the council's disapproving eyes follow us out. We didn't speak until we reached his private study, a room I'd never been in before, smaller and more personal than the formal spaces. Books everywhere, maps spread across a desk, a fireplace burning low. Davos closed the door and leaned against it, his expression carved from frustration. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. "Don't. They're right. I am a liability. I'll undermine you." "They're not right." Davos pushed off the door, moving toward me. "They're afraid. There's a difference." "Afraid of what?" "Change. Evolution. The idea that maybe our old ways of measuring worth, combat skill, wolf strength, pure bloodlines, maybe those aren't the only things that matter." He stopped in front of me. "You know what I think? I think they're terrified because you represent something they can't control. You're not what they expected, not what they would have chosen, and that scares them more than any external threat. But if they challenge you, let them. I've faced challenges before." His hands came up to frame my face. "Willa, I'm not giving you up because my counsel is uncomfortable. I'm not trading something real for something politically convenient. Not again." "Again?" He was quiet for a moment. "After my father died, the council tried to arrange a mating for me, said it would stabilize my rule, provide continuity. The woman they chose was perfect on paper, strong, connected, trained since childhood for Luna responsibilities." He paused. "And everything about her felt like a lie. My gift wouldn't stop screaming, but I almost did it anyway because everyone said I should." "What stopped you?" "She did. She came to me privately and admitted she didn't want this either. Said she was in love with someone else, but her family had pressured her. So we both walked away." His thumbs brushed my cheekbones. "I've regretted a lot of decisions in my life, but that wasn't one of them. And this won't be either. What if my wolf doesn't fully wake? What if I can't? Then we adjust. We find a different way. But I'm not walking away from you because you don't fit some arbitrary standard of what a Luna should be." His voice dropped. "You make my gift go quiet, Willa. Do you understand what that means? For the first time, I can be around someone without feeling like I'm being lied to. That's not something I'm willing to give up." My wolf surged in agreement, and this time she was strong enough that I felt her properly. 6 months, I said quietly. Give me 6 months. Not as Luna, but as your partner, I suppose. Let me train. Let my wolf fully wake. Let me prove to the council and to myself that I can do this. I met his eyes. If after 6 months I'm still not ready, I'll step back. But if I am, then we move forward on our terms, not theirs. Davos studied my face. You're sure? No, but I want to try. Something softened in his expression. Then we try together. The next day, we presented the compromise to the council. 6 months for me to train, to let my wolf fully emerge, to learn what I needed to learn. At the end, they would reassess. The council accepted, though I could see the skepticism in their eyes. They thought I'd fail, thought my wolf would stay dormant, thought I'd prove them right about being too weak for this role. I was determined to prove them wrong. The training was brutal. Combat lessons with the palace guard captain, a stern woman named Rhea who didn't believe in coddling. Diplomatic instruction from Lady Nessa, who turned out to be less hostile than I'd initially thought, just protective of Davos. History lessons, protocol lessons, endless sessions on pack law and territory management. And through it all, my wolf continued waking. Slowly, painfully, like something frozen finally thawing. Some days she was present and strong. Other days she retreated, overwhelmed by stimulation she hadn't experienced in years. But she was there, and she was getting stronger. Davos was with me through all of it. Not hovering, but present. Available when I needed support. Stepping back when I needed space. We fell into a rhythm that felt natural. Training during the day, quiet evenings together in the library or gardens. I learned he had a terrible singing voice, but sang anyway when he thought no one was listening. That he was deadly serious about chess despite being mediocre at it. That he'd once freed all the hunting dogs because he disagreed with the kennel master's treatment of them, causing a massive scandal. He learned I was terrified of heights, but loved storms. That I could sketch people's expressions with uncanny accuracy. That I'd memorized entire passages of pack history and could recite them verbatim when anxious. You do that when you're nervous, he noted one evening. We were in his study, him reviewing territory reports while I sketched. Do what? Recite history. You were muttering about the Treaty of Split Rivers earlier. Was I? I hadn't even realized. It's endearing. It's strange. Those aren't mutually exclusive. He looked up from his papers. Come here. I set down my pencil and crossed to his desk. He pulled me into his lap, and I went without resistance. We'd gotten comfortable with casual touch over the months, hands held during walks, his arm around me during diplomatic dinners, moments like this where we just existed together. Your wolf is close, he said quietly. I can feel her. He was right. She was pressing forward now, curious and alert. Not quite ready to emerge fully, but close. So close. I'm scared of failing, I admitted. Of not being enough even after all this training. Of disappointing you. Davos turned me to face him, his expression serious. Willa, listen to me. You could never disappoint me. You've already exceeded every expectation I didn't know I had. You've survived trauma that would have broken most people. You've trained harder in 6 months than most wolves train in years, and you've done it while dealing with court politics and council skepticism, and your own self-doubt. But nothing. You're extraordinary. And whether your wolf emerges fully tomorrow, or 6 months from now, or never, that doesn't change. His hands framed my face. I didn't choose you because of your wolf. I chose you because you're genuine and brave, and you make me remember what it feels like to hope for something. My wolf surged, and this time she spoke. Just one word, but clear and unmistakable. Mate. I gasped. Davos's eyes widened. Did she... My voice broke. She recognized you. As mate. The joy that flooded his expression was almost painful to witness. Can you shift? Do you want to try? I'd been trying for months. Every day pushing, coaxing, begging my wolf to surface fully. She'd gotten close several times, but never quite broke through that final barrier. But now, with her voice still echoing in my mind, with Davos's hands on me and hope in his eyes. Let me out, my wolf said, clearer this time. Let me see him properly. I closed my eyes and stopped fighting, stopped trying to force it, just opened myself to her presence and let her come forward. The shift hurt less than I'd expected. My body reformed, bones and muscles rearranging themselves into a shape I'd almost forgotten. When I opened my eyes again, I was looking at the world from wolf perspective. Colors muted, but scents intensified. Sounds sharper. Everything more vivid. And Davos was staring at me with absolute wonder. You're beautiful, he breathed. I looked down at myself. Silver fur, smaller than most wolves, but sleek and strong. Not broken, not wrong. Just me, finally complete. My wolf approached Davos cautiously, sniffing his hands, his face. He stayed perfectly still, letting her investigate. Then she did something I didn't expect. She shifted back, pulling me with her, until I was human again and kneeling in front of him. She wanted me to tell you something, I said, my voice rough from the shift. What? That we choose you, both of us, fully. No more trials, no more waiting. I met his eyes. We're ready. Davos pulled me into his arms so tightly I could barely breathe. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. The Luna ceremony was smaller than traditional, just the council, a few key pack members, and witnesses required by law. I'd refused a grand spectacle, and Davos had agreed immediately. I wore a dress I'd made myself, simple blue silk with silver embroidery that echoed the moonflowers from my first dress, but was entirely my own design. My wolf sat just beneath my skin, present and calm. Davos wore formal robes, but had foregone the ceremonial crown, choosing instead the simple circlet he wore daily. When I'd asked why, he'd said, because this isn't about the throne, it's about us. The ceremony itself was straightforward. Ancient words about bonds and loyalty and pack unity. The exchange of marks, my hand bearing his symbol, his bearing mine. The formal recognition from the council who accepted me with varying degrees of enthusiasm. Elder Bowen approached afterward. I admit, he said quietly, I didn't think you'd succeed. I'm glad to have been proven wrong. Thank you, I said, and meant it. Lady Soren was less gracious but nodded acknowledgement. The message was clear. I'd earned my place, even if they still had reservations. When the ceremony ended, and we retreated to Davos's private quarters, our quarters now, I felt the weight of the past months settle. You did it, Davos said, pulling me close. We did it. How does it feel? Being Luna? I considered that. Terrifying. Overwhelming. But right. He laughed, the sound warm against my hair. That's how it should feel. My wolf stirred, content and happy. We'd come so far from that moment in the gardens, when I'd watched my sister steal my life. So far from being the forgotten daughter, the broken girl, the wolf who couldn't shift. What are you thinking? Davos asked. That I'm grateful, I said, honestly. That Cassie took my place at the selection. He pulled back to look at me, surprised. If she hadn't, I continued, if I'd stood in that inner circle with all the other candidates, you might have passed right by me, dismissed me as too quiet, or too damaged or too ordinary. I touched his face. But because she pretended to be me, because your gift recognized the deception, You were looking for me, looking for truth. And when you found it, I recognized you," he finished quietly. We stood together in the quiet of our chambers, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from his skin. Two people who'd found each other through fraud and deception and determination. It wasn't the story I'd imagined. There was no fated bond, no magical instant of recognition. Just two broken people choosing each other daily, building something real from the wreckage of what had been stolen. "What happens now?" I asked. Davos's hand slid to my waist, his thumb tracing slow circles through the thin fabric of my dress. "Now we figure it out together." His voice dropped lower. "Starting with tonight." Heat pooled in my stomach as his other hand came up to cup my face. My wolf hummed approval, already wanting what came next. "One day at a time," I whispered. "One night first." His lips brushed against mine, soft and questioning, then demanding. I kissed him back with everything I had, fear, hope, and above all, choice. Thank you so much for listening. Where are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. And if you enjoyed my story, please subscribe. It's free, and it helps more people hear these stories.